Hey guys, what's up? This video is a part of the 50 Rust project playlist series on my channel. So in case you're not aware about that, go to my channel, playlists, and the 50 Rust project playlist series. Now, we have been building quite a few projects in Rust, and we've been building up our knowledge, with sequentially difficult projects. And we've also applied our Rust knowledge to build on Solana and on Substrate, like very basic projects. But now we're going to come back to Rust and we're going to build up on our Rust knowledge so that we can build more complex projects with different technologies. Okay. So what I've done today is I've created a CRUD project for you guys. Okay. So CRUD basically means create, read, update, delete. So we'll have the ability to create something. And then for read, we have get one, like get a particular value from the database, and or get all. And then update and delete. Now, a good way to do a CRUD project, usually in the beginning, is to just have like a temporary data storage, like an array or something like that, or array or slice or something like that, to get data back. But in our case, we'll be actually using Firebase because it's also quite easy to use. So I thought, why have a temporary storage when you can use Firebase? Now, the part where I've made this very simple is that there are no APIs, right? In CRUDs, you usually have APIs where we'll have to create like routes and controllers and then models and all of it'll be a big project, right? But I'm aware that we haven't built up our knowledge till that place where we can have like a full-blown project as of now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the complexity a lot. And in our main we'll just have one file, main.rs, and then that one file will have all of these functions, and then we'll be calling all of these functions inside the main.rs file. We don't have routes and then controllers, so we don't have all of that. So we just have those functions to create and update and delete and all of that, and calling all those functions from inside the main.rs file. Now we'll need two structs, user struct and response struct. So when you have to interface with a database and you have structs, right? You'll have to use serialization and deserialization. We've already seen that before, Serde library. So we'll be using the exact same library here. So we're just incrementally increasing the difficulty level. That's it. Like not too much, but like very little difficulty will be increased in this one. Okay. So you'll get experience on how to build a CRUD. You'll get a lot of confidence with Rust. You'll know how to use Firebase instead of using just a regular array or slice to show you this. I'm actually using Firebase, so you'll have that confidence that you can probably build something if you wanted to. We'll see how structs are actually used when they work with databases, because I think that we have not seen this use case yet, or I think we have, I'm not sure. All right, and then obviously the serialization, deserialization part here, and then we'll create all these functions, and then we'll call these functions in main.rs. So I hope the plan is clear, and now we'll get started. So what I've done for Firebase is I've logged into my Firebase account, created a new project. Okay, login, create a new project. And then from build, you select real-time databases. Okay, so I've selected real-time databases. And when you click on real-time database, you get this link. And this is the link that you need. So you need only one thing, this link, that's it. And you don't need the SDK. You don't need to do any, big configurations. Very, very simple. Just need this. You just need this link. And you don't need any authorization as well. So I think you have to select, when you're creating this real-time database, you have to select the test option, not the other option. I don't remember the exact name, but the second option is the test option. You want to create that so that it doesn't really worry too much about authentication, all of that. So you get this link, and this is the link that we'll be using now to create our project. Now I'll I'll minimize everything else. And now, here's the program that's working in my terminal, right? So what it does is it creates a user first in Firebase. In my case, it's Akhil Sharma, which is myself, and my email address along with my age. Okay, so this is, it creates this first user. Then it gets that user with that particular ID, gets that user, and then it gets all the users. So we have those functions, right? Create, get all. If there were more, then this function would have got us more of those users, and then it'll update that user. So here you can see that the email used to be this, but now in the updated user, the email is something else. So update also works perfectly fine. And the last one is user deleted, which is for deleting the user, right? So all the functions are working perfectly fine in my terminal. Project is already built. It's on GitHub. If it's not on GitHub, I'll put it right now on GitHub, so don't worry. And now we will get started. So I'll say cargo. I'll just clear everything out so that you get more visibility on what's happening. And I'll say cargo new, and I'll say Rust FB, which is Firebase, and YT, which is for YouTube. So I will now cd into Rust FB YT, and I will open this up in my code editor. And let's see what. Yeah. So as we know, we get a main.rs file and we get cargo.toml file. Now we obviously need some dependencies here, and we also need to add some stuff in our main.rs file, and we won't have any more files in folders. So it's a pretty straightforward project. All right, so first things first, we'll go to cargo.toml and we will change the dependencies. So we'll say Firebase rs, and I'll say 2.0.5, and I'll need the CRUD, which is something that we've already used before. I'll put these spaces in just to be consistent with the toml format, and need CRUD JSON 1.0. You don't have to write all of this down. You can just copy and paste from my GitHub project. Okay, I'm just writing it in case anybody wants to actually write it themselves. 1.2, and then now this is the important part, right? Features you want full. Okay, so we need Tokyo and Firebase rs, CRUD, and CRUD JSON. And we've used all of these packages before, apart from Firebase rs. Yeah, that's the one that we'll be using right now. Okay, so I'll get rid of all of this, and firstly I'll say I want to work with Firebase _rs. Okay, and I also want to work with CRUD. So it's deserialize, serialize. Perfect. Now, if you remember the diagram, I talked about having two structs. So we need two structs to work with today's program. The first is struct user, and the second is struct response. Okay. Now the user will have things like name, which will be a string, age, which will be unsigned integer 32, email, which will again be a string. Now we know by now that we have to derive serialize, deserialize, and debug. And here also the same thing. So I'll just copy and paste this line here, right? Now, if you've done those 43 Golang projects with me, you know that this is the very same concept, in the sense Rust understands these structs, but the database doesn't understand structs. So we have to serialize, deserialize with JSON. This is why we use all of this. And I've covered this very extensively in all my Golang projects, most of my Golang projects. So in case you've done those, and also if you don't know about that, then just want to tell you that there's a 42 or 43 Golang project playlist series on my channel, so you can check them out. They keep increasing. I mean, probably by the time you watch this, it'll be 50 Golang projects, something like that. They keep increasing. All right. Then I need Tokyo. So when you work with Tokyo in your main function, this is what you do, because we've already built projects with using Tokyo. And now I can get my async functions. Okay, so my main function will be async. And firstly, let's initialize a user. So we'll say it's of type user struct. Okay, it's a user variable, and it's going to have some values. So my name will be an actual name, like Akhil Sharma, which is my name, and I obviously want it to be in string, so I'll say toString. Age will be 30, and email will be again we'll have to use toString, but I'll say akhil.sharma@gmail.com.to_string. Okay, so that's that. And in the main function, obviously there'll be so many more things. So we'll come here, create some space. Now we know that we're working with Firebase, right? So I'll say Firebase, and I'll say Firebase new, and create a new connection to Firebase. And I'm going to be using my URL that Firebase gave to me, and you'll have a different URL. And after I upload this video, I'll also delete this so that because you get a 30 days limit from Firebase, and anybody can access your data and access and work with your programs if you don't do that, if you don't remove this line here. So you'll be in trouble. So make sure you do that. Okay. Now now we want to do those things, right? We want to create the user, get all the users, get one user or interchangeable, then update the user and delete the user, right? So these 5 things we want to do. Now, and we also said that we'll call all of those functions from our func main, right? If you remember the diagram, I said that we'll call all those 5 functions from our func main. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first call my, set users, because I have to create the user first. So I want to call my set user function, and I'll say let response is equal to set user, call that function, get me a response. And here I'll say Firebase ampersand user and dot await. User being this user. Ideally, if you're building an API, you'll be getting it from the request, so you'll have to like process the request and get the data. So I've removed that complete layer of complexity, and all you have is like a hard-coded user, and you're sending it along with Firebase, and you're awaiting for it, right? And you'll get that in response. I hope that's clear. In case you don't know what these ampersands, this is like sending by reference. I don't want to actually end up changing the original values, so you send by reference, and then you have let users is equal to get the users. So now these functions, I'll have to create these functions like set user, get users function. These will be outside my main function ideally. Okay, and here I'll say Firebase comma and response dot name dot await. Okay, so that'll get me all of the users. And you will, so firstly here you will okay, so this actually works for just one single user, so I'll just remove get users here because I'm getting one particular user. Okay, but if I want to get all the users, then I'll say let users, and here instead it'll be actually user, and I'll have to add a mutable keyword here. So if I want all users, I'll call my get underscore users, which is plural function, and just pass Firebase. That's it, because I want to get all the users. And dot wait. Okay. Okay. So here, when I get all the users, right, I want to print them out. Comma users. Here also I'll print out the user that we'll get. That's how you saw when I showed you in the demo. You saw that all of these things are printed out in the terminal, because we're actually doing that. We're actually printing out the terminals, everything in the terminal. All right. Now we want to talk about update. So we'll say user.email is equal to, and here we can pass any hard-coded email. So I'm saying update email at gmail.com to string. And so when I'll update the user's data, in my case the email was akhil.sharma@gmail.com, this should become equal to this once I call the update function. Okay. So that's my user email, and I'm going to pass this to my underscore user to update the user. So update the user function, and here you'll pass Firebase comma ampersand response dot name comma ampersand user, and you'll say dot await. Okay, so that's your update user function, passing Firebase, passing response.name and user, and you're updating that user. Now you will print out that updated user. So you'll say print. Just adjust this, because I think sometimes what happens is my face, which is on the bottom right, ends up covering some of the code. So if that happens, please don't panic, guys. The code is already there on GitHub. You can just compare in case you miss something out, right? So I usually get a lot of comments on my on my channel saying that, hey, your face is covering the code. Well, yeah, I mean, I want to keep the face there because it almost like makes you feel like I'm with you when you're building the project. Otherwise, like because I hate watching videos where there's no presenter, right? So because like it's very human to human, right? Like education or information it transfers from human to human. So that's what I believe, and that's what I'm very comfortable with. So that's why I keep the face there, but sometimes it covers up the code. So if it does that, please know that the code is already there on GitHub, and you can always get it from there. Okay, so everything looks okay to me till now, right? And lastly, we have our delete user, where we'll send Firebase response.name.await and println, and we'll say user deleted. Perfect. So now at least we're done with the with the main function. We're done with the main function. Okay, and we have to now start building each of these functions. Okay. Just make sure this Firebase F is capital. Sometimes you might just make that mistake by you don't want to do that, because Firebase needs to be capital here. Okay, yeah. So thing is, you will have to create set user function, get user function, get users, and update user function, delete user function. Now to do that, I would need hash map. So let's say from the standard library, from the collections, get me hash map. Okay, now I'm very comfortable building all these different functions. So the first thing that you do usually when you build a function like that is you will put an exclamation here if you want. Okay, so yeah, so the first thing you do is you create the outline of the functions. So for example, here you'll say async and then function set underscore user. Okay, and there will be obviously some parameters it takes, arguments it takes, and then there will be some something it gives out like a response, right? And then you'll have some function definition. Similarly, for getting the users, you'll have a very similar syntax. You'll say async, and you'll say function get underscore users, and there'll be something here. Return a hash map in this case of string and the user. And we'll see why that happens, because getting all the users. Then you get a single user. So here the thing that you get back could be just one single user. Okay, so you'd say fn get underscore user, and here to get back is a representation of the user struct. Here you'll have string with user, here you'll just have user struct. Then you have your update function. So using fn update user, and this is how I always usually do it. I always create this kind of a bare bones structure, like a complete outline of every single function, so that you can easily build it later on. And then I need delete underscore user. Okay, and here you didn't really need anything to be printed. You just need to say like user deleted or something like that, and that's good enough. Now, since you know that we have to use serialize deserialize because we're working with structs here, and then Firebase is storing JSON, I would need two helper functions. Ideally, I would have kept them in a separate folder called helper functions, but since we want to keep the complexity very low, I will say s and string with small s, send a response. Now this is a helper function, and this helps me use serde JSON from underscore string s dot unwrap. Okay, and we'll use these functions. We'll use this function. So you convert a string to a response. So you'll say convert a string to a response. I'll need this a couple of times in my code. And now I want to convert a string to a user also. So what I'll do is I'll have string to user s and ampersand string. This returns a user certi underscore JSON from string s dot unwrap. All right. Okay, so we'll keep needing to serialize from the user to JSON and so on. So this is why we needed to helper functions, and we'll use them, and you'll understand that much better. But I'm hoping that you already know this concept if you've been following my Golang projects, or if you've even followed the Rust projects that we've done in the past. You probably know why we are serializing, deserializing already with JSON. But it's okay. In case you have like no idea, no problem. When we'll actually build these functions, everything will get like much clearer. So we will start with our set user function, right? So we have to build all of these functions because the definition is ready, the skeleton is ready, but we have to actually build these functions now. So we'll start with the set user function because this is the first thing. I mean, you have to first create the user, and then you have to get, and then you have to delete that user, update that user, right? If you have not created the user in the database, there's no point. So here in this bracket, Firebase client ampersand Firebase. This is the argument it takes in, and user. Okay, so the user data, which is in our case based on the user struct, is what it will receive, and user data is basically this struct, this variable user, which is of type user struct, and this is the details. So that's what you want to pass to this function, and that's how it will set that data in the Firebase. So here we'll create, let Firebase is equal to Firebase client dot add users. Okay, that's the collection. Let underscore users is equal to Firebase dot set user. And here you'll pass this ampersand reference to this user, ampersand user, and we'll await for this to happen. So every time you're working with the database, you're calling a Firebase actual function, or in this case it's Firebase, but let's say it's Redis, or it's Postgres, or MongoDB. Doesn't matter what database you're talking to, but whenever you're talking to a database, you want to await for that to resolve. Okay, return string to. I mean, I sometimes might not do it. Okay, sometimes in some videos you'll see that it's not a rule that I follow, but it's ideal. I mean, you should follow it, right? Because sometimes if I'm in a hurry, I won't follow it. But if I'm being very mindful, then I'll obviously follow that rule. Okay. So that's it. So you get your users, you set the users, and you wait to get the users, and then you use the string to response helper function, which we've created together, string to response, to send out the response, of the user. So that's how it will get printed in the terminal. This is the user who was set right now, and we're getting him fresh from the database. So he was set. Okay. So that's your set user is done. So where we're calling the set user function, it's done. Now, by the way, this CRUD, right, the CRUD that we're building right now is only like the beginning of the iceberg of building CRUDs, right? So we'll be building like way more complex CRUDs. We'll be using Redis or MongoDB or Postgres and all those kind of databases, and we'll be using like more complex CRUDs in the sense there'll be validations, there will be different folders for everything like routes and all of that. So that's why I want to get you started with a very simple project, so that there's like very less complexity, so that you get in the habit of building CRUDs and you know what a CRUD is. And for many people, right, CRUDs are what they'll be building in their full-time job. Okay, so I mean, like that's a very big use case, right? In the sense you'll be building a lot of CRUDs throughout your career, no matter what you're building. But CRUDs will definitely be a part of it. So I'm laughing because many people don't like to work on CRUDs, right? Once they become like a senior developer, they think, oh, CRUDs are beneath me. I don't want to ever work on CRUD apps. But it's just that when they start building like really complex projects, also they realize that, oh, you have to build a CRUD to serve all of that, whatever complex stuff you're building. You have to serve all of that through an API, right? So it's an irony. And I know many senior engineers like with more than 12 or 15 years of experience who hate building CRUDs, but then they have to because whatever stuff they end up building, like even a blockchain or something, they have to build CRUDs to create those JSON RPC APIs to serve all of that data, whatever they create, all of that information. Okay. Anyhow, so here we're writing the get users functions. So Firebase client add users again. We want to initiate that collection. So it's very similar to MongoDB. If you use MongoDB, you check out that collection and then you just get or set whatever from that collection. So obviously you don't have get and set in MongoDB, but you have MongoDB functions for getting and setting the values, and in Redis you have get and set, like exact same thing. Okay, so it's very similar. Like once you start doing this stuff, you start realizing all these patterns that appear, and they're everything is like very similar once you've built a couple of things. So we'll say firebase.get, and here you'll say hash map string comma user, and then you want to await. So you'll get all the data, get all the users. That's why we have a hash map with string and users, and we'll get all of the data. Okay? And then we'll say println with an exclamation mark, format it out, comma users, which is this. So you want to format the users and print them out. In our case, we just have one user, so only one user will be printed out here. But in case we had more, this function would still work perfectly fine. So our get users function is done, as you can see. Calling get users function here, and we're accepting Firebase. So just make sure all the parameters to all these functions, they match. So set user, you have these two, that's matching. For get users, you have just Firebase, that's matching. So that's perfect, right? I know I'm maybe scrolling up and down too fast. Maybe it's very distracting for you. So I'll just keep my screen stable here so that you can just look at the get users function. And if you want something, please make sure you've typed it. And now I will move up at the set user function also. So make sure you get both these functions correctly. Fine. Make sure you understand them. Pause this video here in case you want to really copy this properly. And then now let's move forward for our get user function. Get user function is a single user, get user. So let's see what it's accepting. It's accepting Firebase and a response name. So we'll come here, get user, and here we will say Firebase client ampersand Firebase, comma ID ampersand string, and here you will say let Firebase is equal to Firebase underscore client dot add users dot add ampersand ID. All right. So let user equal to Firebase dot get. We want to get a specific user. $await. And you want to return user dot under. So just one user will be returned of that particular ID. The particular ID of the user with that ID will be returned. Okay. Update user. So update user. So I'll just keep this screen stationary here. Just get this. Make sure you get this perfectly fine. Then we'll move on to update user. For update user, I'll just move up now. Okay, for update user we need Firebase, we need response name and user. Okay, so we need basically the ID and the data of the new user. Okay, so whenever you update something, you need the ID of the particular user you want to update data for, and then you need new data, and then you need obviously Firebase because you want to update in Firebase. So here we'll say update user Firebase underscore client ampersand Firebase comma ID, which will be ampersand string capital S, and user, which is ampersand user. Okay, so that's update user. Now here we'll say let Firebase equal to Firebase client dot add, again the same thing, users dot add, and you want to pass the specific ID, reference to that ID, and then now let underscore user is equal to Firebase dot update. So as you can see here, we're not doing a lot of hard work, right? Firebase already has these functions, update and get and set, right? So we just calling those functions. There's no rocket science here. So no stress. I mean, even if you're very new to Rust, you can still pick all of this up, and still it's a great project to have in your resume or in your like portfolio. It's a great project to have. Okay, user.unwrap dot data. Awesome. Now time to delete users. How do you do that? So you say Firebase client ampersand Firebase ID and ampersand string. Okay, so now we want to delete that user with a specific ID. So you'll say Firebase is equal to Firebase client dot add users. The same thing, right? So Firebase client dot add users dot add the specific ID ampersand ID. All right. Now you could copy all of this, right? You could copy all of that, but I would suggest you write everything, like you type everything with me, right? Don't copy and paste, because if you're new to Rust, specifically, Rust is a syntax that you don't get used to very easily. Okay, so let me tell you that beforehand. It's not a syntax that you'll get used to very easily, and you'll make a lot of mistakes. So you want to write as much as possible, type like on your own as much as possible, because that ways you would then have muscle memory, and then if you're writing something wrong, then something at the back of your mind will hit that, this doesn't seem very correct. Firebase dot delete dot wait. All right, so seems like our function is done, right? We can go through it again very quickly. I mean, it looks okay. So what I do usually, right, what I've done with Golang, at least in those 43 Golang project series, is that I've built those projects, and I build those big projects, and I run them, and then they're like hundreds of issues and errors. And mostly when I'm writing code, right, I'm not looking at all the typos that I'm making on the way, and that's okay, because I'm experienced enough to handle any type of errors that come at me, and I'm able to handle them. So and I want you also to be in that position, like whatever error comes, you should be able to solve it. So don't stress yourself too much when you're writing the code. It's okay, but when you run the code and you see errors, that's and you shouldn't panic when all of that happens, right? You should be very good at handling errors. So let's run cargo run. Now, since we're building it for the first time, it'll take a lot of time because it has to build the entire project for us. But every subsequent time when we build it, it's not that time consuming. So now I'll just sit around for a while. I'll wait. Okay, so it's found errors already, which is perfect. I mean, I expected errors, but we can go through them one by one. Cannot find value response. So this is, as you can see here, this is a text like a typo, right? It should be response or response. Now I start getting a lot of comments in my YouTube channel that, hey, why did you do this? Why can't you type correctly? And it's very distracting, very disturbing. So I mean, yes. So if you're a very junior developer, if you're starting out, yes, this will be very, very disturbing to you, because I don't edit my videos out. Whatever, all the mistakes that I make, it's all for everybody to see. So yeah. But that's how it is. That's how real programming is. I mean, you'll always see these kind of issues, man. I mean, there's no way out from this. So I can edit everything out and make it a very good experience for you. But obviously, I don't have the time for all of that. And this is the best I can do. All right. So response.name and all right. So okay. So on line 23 also, it's saying there's some issue on line 23 also. So which is your email. Now here, obviously I can see the issue, right? I hope you can see it as well, which is S should be small. Now when I try running it, okay, so yeah, all the issues have gone. So yeah, what I'm saying is, don't stress too much. As you gain more experience, you'll know that you shouldn't stress too much about writing perfect code and why are you writing typos and can't you see what you're writing? Yeah, I know people with like 1-2 years of experience, they they look at that and then they get really, really stressed out. But don't stress out. Just get more used to writing more code, and everything will be fine. I mean, don't stress too much, right? This is your user getting created. This is all the users, if we have only one. And this is that one user that we're getting with a specific ID. This is the user getting updated. As you can see, the updated email, and then the user got deleted. Okay, so everything works perfectly fine. I have no complaints from the code. Pushing it on GitHub now. So all of you can access it. I'm Akhil Sharma 90 on GitHub. In case you don't know, please follow me. And that's it. I'll see you in the next video. I hope you're enjoying this series. I hope you're building your knowledge along with me. I hope you're enjoying this, and we're going to turn up the heat a little bit more in the next videos. Okay. So thank you, and do subscribe if you haven't already. I don't know if I said that or not, but yeah, do subscribe. Thank you.